Forget venomous spiders, killer jellyfish, or the world's deadliest snakes. Modern Australia is terrifying, sure, but prehistoric Australia was a whole different level of nightmare. Imagine setting foot on a continent where the land itself wanted you dead. This wasn't just a landscape of danger, it was a gallery of evolutionary horror. Here, crocodiles didn't just wait in murky water, they sprinted on land. Giant lizards hunted like lions. Snakes didn't just bite, they crushed and shredded. And the mammals? They were worse. Tree-climbing marsupial lions with bone-breaking bites, wombat tanks that weighed as much as cars, and flightless birds that could kill a man with a single kick. Every step, every shadow, every sound could spell the end. And somehow, the first humans who arrived over 50,000 years ago didn't just survive it, they conquered it. They faced the most hostile ecosystem Earth has ever known and lived long enough to pass down their stories, shape the land, and eventually help drive many of these monsters to extinction. This is not just a story of beasts, it's a story of resilience, of survival against all logic, all odds. Welcome to Prehistoric Australia, the hardest survival mode nature ever designed. Chapter 1, The Crocodile That Ran Like a Predator. Meet Quinkana, a crocodile not bound to the water but built for the hunt on land. Unlike its modern aquatic relatives, Quinkana had long, powerful limbs that lifted its body high off the ground, allowing it to sprint across the rugged terrain of ancient Australia. With hoof-like toes for traction and a flattened tail for balance, it resembled something between a crocodile and a greyhound. Averaging 10 feet long but capable of growing past 20 feet, these predators were armed with serrated, blade-like teeth made for slicing flesh, not gripping fish. A bite force exceeding 1,500 pounds per square inch meant they could crush bone with ease, and their ambush tactics made them lethal from land or water. But what truly sets Quinkana apart was its adaptability. It could chase prey across dry plains or leap into water after a desperate escapee. Early humans had no refuge from it. Running wouldn't work, hiding wouldn't help. The only advantage was human intelligence, but at a time when tools were primitive and numbers sparse, even that was barely enough. Fossil evidence places these crocodiles across Australia's northeast, with trackways indicating powerful, fast movement. They weren't sluggish ambush hunters, they were pursuit predators, with the endurance to keep up with fleeing prey and the anatomical efficiency to kill it quickly. Imagine walking through a dense, prehistoric forest, leaves crunching underfoot, and hearing the thunder of reptilian footsteps closing in from behind. You wouldn't see Quinkana until it was too late. Its serrated teeth, shaped more like those of theropod dinosaurs than modern crocs, suggest a feeding strategy built on active assault, not passive capture. And because they stood tall on their limbs, they had better visibility, coordination, and mobility than any croc alive today. Quinkana reigned at the top of its ecosystem, not because it was sneaky, but because it could win the chase. Unlike today's ambush reptiles that strike once and drag prey under, Quinkana was the prehistoric equivalent of a sprinter with a chainsaw in its mouth. Scientists theorize that these crocodiles may have worked solo, staking territory and ambushing prey animals like giant kangaroos, diprotodons, and, unfortunately for them, early humans. Their success as apex predators was likely a driving force behind human behavioral adaptation in early Australia, forcing our ancestors to rethink shelter, timing, and group strategies. To move alone meant risking a one-way chase. To stay near water was no safer than venturing inland. Fire may have been one of the few tools that gave humans an edge, casting light and scent barriers at night. But firewood runs out, and a hungry Quinkana didn't need much time to close a gap. The fact that humans survived alongside these land crocs, despite being vastly outmatched in speed, strength, and bite power, is a testament not just to ingenuity, but to the relentless trial and error that defined human evolution. Every footstep in ancient Australia had to be measured, and every sound could be your last. For early humans, Quinkana wasn't a myth or campfire story. It was an ever-present death sentence on 4 legs, waiting for you to make one wrong move. Chapter 2. Megalania, the dragon of the outback. Now imagine crossing paths with a predator so massive it rewrites what we even consider possible for a reptile, a creature that was less lizard and more walking catastrophe, a real-life monster prowling the ancient outback. Meet Megalania, or Varanus priscus, the largest terrestrial lizard ever to exist, and arguably the apex land predator of its time. If Quinkana turned the forest floor into a danger zone, Megalania turned the entire horizon into a threat. Picture a monitor lizard already resembling today's Komodo dragon, but inflated into something prehistoric nightmares are made of. Minimum size estimates put it at 11 feet and 350 pounds, already big enough to rival a large sea lion. But the largest fossils suggest these titans stretched up to 26 feet and tipped the scales at over 4,000 pounds. That's nearly the weight of a modern pickup truck, with the muscle and biological hardware of a perfect killing machine. This wasn't just a scaled-up Komodo, it was a biomechanical terror with thick, trunk-like limbs, a barrel-shaped torso, and a tail like a battering ram. Its feet had meat hook claws designed to grip, tear, and climb, and its jaws were lined with recurved, serrated teeth that didn't just puncture, they held on. A Megalania bite meant flesh ripped backward, blood gushed, and movement slowed. But what sealed its legacy as an apex predator was its venom. Modern monitors produce venom that prevents blood clotting, meaning wounds just bleed and bleed and bleed, causing blood pressure to drop, panic to rise, and strength to fail. It's likely Megalania inherited or developed the same adaptation, turning its prey's bloodstream into a leaking faucet. Even if you managed to escape the initial ambush, you'd be living on borrowed time. The lizard didn't need to chase you forever. It just needed to bite once and wait. The bleeding would do the rest. Combine that with a bite force powerful enough to shatter bone and a neck that could deliver whip-like strikes, and you had a creature that didn't need to be fast. It just had to be close. Megalania's very presence would have shaped early human survival tactics. The first humans in Australia were likely nomadic foragers and hunters with simple spears, stone tools, and campfire smoke as their only shields. Against Megalania, that was like facing a tank with a twig. Early shelters had to be above ground or surrounded by fire. Movement was likely cautious, quiet, and tightly grouped. Children couldn't be left alone. Injured tribe members may have been liabilities. Every hunt meant scanning the bush, not just for prey, but for massive stalking death. And unlike most large predators, Megalania could show up anywhere. Fossil evidence shows it favored dry woodlands and grasslands, making it an ever-present threat. The ancient Aboriginal legends that speak of giant goannas may well be cultural echoes of Megalania. These oral histories speak of beasts that could swallow men whole, appear out of nowhere, and haunt the edges of campsites. Megalania wasn't a distant danger, it was a looming one, embedded into the human psyche, the original predator behind the instinct to fear what's hiding in the brush. But what makes Megalania truly terrifying isn't just its size or power, it's its intelligence. Monitor lizards today are some of the smartest reptiles, showing problem-solving skills, memory, and even basic learning. If Megalania shared these traits, it wasn't just hunting, it was calculating. It could stalk prey, learn patterns, and ambush with precision. It may have targeted watering holes, predictable hunting paths, or even human camps. And if young Megalanias climbed trees, there was no escape vertically. Imagine an early human family gathering water only to see tree branches crack above them as a juvenile Megalania dropped in like death from above. The sheer psychological strain of living alongside something like that, never knowing if the next bend in the trail meant survival or slaughter, must have accelerated the development of group defense behaviors, night watches, and fire barriers. Over generations, these lizards may have even driven early human innovation. Sharper spears, better traps, perhaps even the concept of early fences made from thorny bushes to ward off giant predators at night. Their extinction remains a mystery, but the timeline suggests humans may have played a role, either by overhunting their prey, altering their environment, or eventually daring to take them on directly. If that's true, then Megalania wasn't just Australia's most terrifying prehistoric animal. It was one of the greatest tests early humans ever faced. And remarkably, they passed it. Chapter 3. The snake that shredded and the mammals that hunted like monsters. If you thought land crocs and venom-laced dragons were the worst prehistoric Australia had to offer, you haven't met the giants that slithered, shredded, or leapt from the shadows. Enter Wanambi, a genus of giant constrictor snakes that reigned before venomous snakes even evolved in the region. Unlike today's flexible-jawed pythons that swallow prey whole, Wanambi had a rigid skull structure, meaning it didn't engulf its victims, it tore them apart. Stretching up to 20 feet and several hundred pounds, this snake didn't rely on subtle venom. It would ambush prey, latch on with rows of backward curving teeth, and constrict with crushing force until internal organs failed or massive blood loss took over. It likely disemboweled its prey during the struggle, leaving behind gruesome evidence of its power. But even Wanambi was just one terror in a whole lineup of oversized, lethal serpents belonging to the Matsoid family. An ancient dynasty of snakes that didn't just hunt on the ground, but could strike from trees, water, or ambush burrows, making every square inch of the outback a potential kill zone. And as if that weren't enough, the mammalian predators were just as terrifying. Meet Thylacoleo carnifex, the marsupial lion, a 260-pound ambush predator with the pound-for-pound strongest bite force of any known mammal. Its short, deep skull maximized pressure, delivering over 1,000 pounds per square inch through blade-like premolars capable of slicing through bone. Forget canines. Its massive incisor-like front teeth worked like daggers, while its hooked claws and opposable thumbs meant it could climb trees and haul prey into branches like a prehistoric leopard. This apex predator didn't run you down. It dropped from above or burst from cover, crushed your spine, and dragged you away. Add to that Diprotodon, the wombat the size of a car. Technically a herbivore, but with the weight and strength to crush bones if threatened. One charge could flatten a predator or a person. And let's not forget Ingenious, a 500-pound flightless bird standing 6.5 feet tall with legs like sledgehammers and talons sharp enough to shred flesh. Though likely herbivorous, it was built like a linebacker and could deliver fatal kicks if provoked. Early humans couldn't just worry about what was behind the trees. They had to watch the skies, the ground, the trees above them, and even the dirt beneath their feet. Prehistoric Australia was not a food chain. It was a kill maze, with death lurking in every biome, and survival depending not on strength or weapons, but group coordination, environmental knowledge, and sheer instinctual brilliance. Every creature was optimized by evolution not just to kill, but to outcompete every other killing machine around it. And somehow humans held their ground. Prehistoric Australia wasn't just another chapter in Earth's wild evolutionary history. It was the ultimate survival gauntlet, a continent-sized death trap engineered by nature to test the very limits of life. From sprinting crocodiles with blade-like teeth to venom-dripping lizards the size of cars, giant flesh-ripping snakes, marsupial lions with bone-snapping jaws, and herbivores that could flatten you without noticing. It was a world that killed without hesitation. And yet, into this nightmare landscape stepped one of the most fragile, slow, and poorly armed creatures imaginable: us. Early humans didn't belong in this arena of monsters by strength or speed. They survived by adaptation, by intelligence, by coordination. They built firewalls, sharpened stone, watched the skies, and stayed in groups. They listened, learned, and fought back. And over time, as these ancient megafauna vanished, whether by climate, human impact, or both, the last thing standing was not the fiercest predator, but the smartest one. Prehistoric Australia wasn't just a graveyard of monsters. It was the crucible where human resilience was forged in fire, fear, and blood. The predators are long gone, but their memory lives on in the land, in legend, and perhaps in the primal part of us that still flinches at a rustle in the dark. Because deep down, some part of us remembers the time when just walking through the forest meant stepping into the jaws of extinction, and walking out meant evolution had chosen you to live another day.